Give to God what belongs to God, and Jesus had a brilliant answer that they didn't even know what to do. Now remember, he's being examined as the Lamb of God, and I don't even think the Pharisees, Sadducees, Herodians, none of them even understand what they're doing. But it is Passover, the time for the animal sacrifice to be examined, and Jesus is being examined by those religious leaders who want to trap him so that they can get rid of them. And so now we come into the Sadducees, and they're going to ask a question about marriage in heaven. Father, we do come before you. We call to you, Lord God, and we ask you to speak to our hearts, to give us guidance, that may your word be alive to us, Lord. May it give us the knowledge we need for our lives and for the answers to people who might have these questions. We thank you for Jesus Christ. We know that he is the perfect Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And this morning as we study your word, Lord, I just pray for that insight and the work of the Holy Spirit in our hearts and the conviction of the Holy Spirit and the encouragement of the Holy Spirit, the teaching of the Holy Spirit, Lord, that we would hear your voice speak this morning and know that we have spent time with you, Lord. So we lift this up in Jesus' name. Amen? Yes. So, starting in verse 23, we come to the Sadducees, and it says, the same day, that's after the question about the taxes, the same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him. So, the Sadducees were a liberal party, Jesus' time. The Sadducees, as you can see here, one of the things about them is they did not believe in the resurrection. And that's why they're sad, you see. Come on, that was cute. They are sad. And they only believed in the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They didn't really believe in any other books, only the 5 books of Moses. They denied the existence of angels, so they did not believe in angels, fallen angels, angels of any sort. And so because of this, they also did not believe in immortality of the soul. They didn't believe in life after death and that we live on. And so the Bible's clear about these subjects, and Jesus is going to cover some of this as he speaks to them. So now they come. We had the Herodians, the Pharisees, come and ask question, and now the Sadducees come, and they came to him and they asked, saying, Teacher, Moses said that if a man dies having no children, okay, you gotta remember that, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up offsprings for his brother. Now Deuteronomy chapter 25 covers this, what they're talking about here, the law of Moses and what Moses wrote down. And it did say that if a man died, and then you got to imagine there's a few brothers, they're going to come up with 7 to exaggerate the point. But if a man died and he had no children, then his brother next in line, or next of kin, what the Bible calls next of kin, would come and he would marry the wife, the sister-in-law. And the purpose was so that if she had a child, he would take the name of the first husband, and the name of the first husband would continue to live on and be a part of Israel for the purpose of the land that was distributed by Israel, by God to the people, would remain in the family. So that was the whole idea behind it. This is why a brother would marry his sister-in-law, providing his wife died and she had no children. So then the next child would be his child, and that would carry on his line. But this is how they kept the lines, this is how they kept the property in the family. And so now they say, Teacher, Moses said that if a man died having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up offspring for his brother. So you guys got that, right? I don't need to explain that again. Okay, cool. Now it says, now there were with us 7 brothers. So here's the exaggeration. They're bringing 7 brothers. And it says the first died after he had married, and having no offsprings, left his wife to his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third, and even to the seventh. This is a deadly woman.
Wow.
7 brothers all died. None of them have children. Then it says, least of all, the woman also died. Someone got rid of her finally. And it says, therefore, in the resurrection. Remember, the Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection, but they're bringing this up because they want to get them. In the resurrection, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For they all had her. They were all intimate with her. They were all married to her. So it's a very good question, really, right? 7 husbands on earth, all died. And if there's a resurrection, because they don't believe in the resurrection, we do. They asked Jesus, so in the resurrection, when everybody's done and when they're gone to heaven, whose wife of the 7 shall she be? Does she get to pick which one she wants? Is it the first one who married her from the very beginning? Whose wife will she be? When I look at this question, I think it's actually a good question. And it's interesting because people believe in this. Did you know that the Mormon church believes in what they call eternal marriage? Eternal marriage. The Mormon church teaches that a man and woman who get married, not in their churches, but in their temple, are being married, united for eternity. In other words, even from here to heaven, they are still married. That's not a biblical teaching, but that's what they believe. And so they believe that once they get married, there is what they call the sealing, and the sealing takes place only in the temple. It cannot be at a church building. It has to be at their temple, and they have temples located, throughout the world, all over. So that's kind of interesting because notice what Jesus says concerning eternal marriage. It says, Jesus answered and said to them, you are mistaken. You are mistaken. In other words, he's saying you've been deceived and you've gone astray. That's what he's saying. He's saying you're mistaken. And then notice this, not knowing the scriptures. Not knowing is the idea of you're not aware or you don't understand what the actual words of God speak. For us, the Bible. Remember, in Jesus' time, they had no Bible. They had the Old Testament. They had the Torah, mostly the Torah. The Sadducees only believe in the Torah, the first 5 books. So Jesus says, you know what? You're mistaken. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know. You're not aware. In fact, you don't even understand the scriptures, the Word of God, nor the power, the miraculous power of God. You have no idea who God is. You don't recognize His power. You don't know the Word, and you don't know what you think you know. Then he says, for in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven. So first of all, he clears up. He says, in the resurrection. So remember, they don't believe in the resurrection. He says, in the resurrection, saying that there is a resurrection, first of all. He says, they neither marry nor are given in marriage. There is no marriage in heaven other than the marriage of the Lamb of God to the church of God, us. That's the only marriage in heaven. But he says, as far as man is concerned and women are concerned, men and women, there are no marriages in heaven. I wrote in my note, what you have here is all you get. And that's it. Because once we leave this world and go into the heavenly world, we are all the bride of Christ and we belong to Him. Marriage is only here for the specific purpose of reproducing the land, as we were told in Genesis, to worship God, to know God, and to reproduce. So Jesus says, you don't know what you're talking about, because in heaven, in the resurrection, there is no marriage. Why? Because they're like the angels in heaven. Well, the angels didn't have to reproduce because they were created beings. They weren't mortal as we are. They didn't have human passions like we do. And they didn't have to do that. Plus, in heaven, there's no need to reproduce people, because only people who have accepted Christ can be there in the first place. So Jesus makes it real clear that heaven has no marriages, and I know people that this breaks their heart. They think, we're married here, we ought to be married there. Some of you might think, well, that's good news, man. I didn't like her or him anyway. This is kind of a good deal, really. You just start over. But verse 31, he says, but concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? This was said in Exodus chapter 3, verse 6. When Moses was talking at the burning bush, the Lord appeared in the flame of the fire. You remember that story. And as he's talking to Moses, Moses wants to know, who shall he say shall send him? And he says, I am the God. Present tense. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In other words, they were dead physically, but not spiritually. So where were they? We know where they went. They went to what later became known as the bosom of Abraham. And they were awaiting the Messiah to come. When Jesus came, remember, he goes into hell. Now, some of you that don't know about hell before the New Testament had two compartments. The bosom of Abraham, where the lost souls went of the Old Testament that believed in God. And then you had hell, the hellfire, on the other side. The Bible said there was a gulf between them, separating them. On one side, people were in pain. On the other side, they were awaiting the Messiah. So anyway, they were in Abraham's bosom. They're still alive. They're just waiting for the resurrection to take place, or actually the setting free, because Jesus came. Remember, he had the keys of hell, and he unlocked the doors and set the captives free. That's the prior to New Testament believers in God who are with God even now. And so he says that he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, indicating that there is life after death. So he settles that argument there. And then he says, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Makes it clearer. God is the God of the living. So you don't understand the resurrection. They are still living, and God is the God of the living, not the dead. So we know that when Jesus says it, it's going to be true, because he cannot lie. He's God manifested in the flesh, and we know there's life after death. And when the multitudes heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. In other words, they were speechless. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. They couldn't believe it. Now, the Sadducees came to trap him, and Jesus explains it and straightens them out. So then it says, but when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, meaning they huddled together for the same purpose, to make a plan to trap him, because they didn't like that Jesus, first of all, he silenced the Herodians earlier about taxes. He silenced the Sadducees right now about the resurrection, and now they're figuring out, man, we got to do something. So they come together to plan something to trap him. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him, saying, Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? So they bring a lawyer into the picture. Now, a lawyer back then wasn't like our lawyers today. A lawyer was actually a teacher of the law, of the scriptures, and you would call an expert in the law. And so they would study it, they would teach it, they would reveal it to people, and they knew basically the Torah, the 5 books of the Old Testament. They knew it inside out because they were expert in it. So that's what made them teachers. So now they're going to come and they decide to ask Jesus, which is the great commandment in the law? Now remember, Moses was given the 10 commandments. But after Moses came the religious leaders, and they brought up, out of the 10 commandments, there's 613 commandments to the law. And this is what they're talking about. Of the 1613, which is the greatest of this law? 248 of them, they say, are positive in nature, of the 613 laws. 365 are in the negative concerning those laws. So this lawyer, he asked Jesus, which one's the greatest? Which one's the greatest? Jesus said to him, here's the greatest. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Deuteronomy chapter 6, which we sang this morning, in verse 5 is this second part. The first part is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then it says, then you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Jesus didn't quote the verse 4, but he did quote verse 5. And he said in verse 38, this is the first and the great commandment. It's the one that should be known as the greatest, because why? It's because the idea is to love the Lord your God. If you don't love the Lord your God, then you cannot love anything else. Now, in society, we are told that we must love ourselves. If you want to forgive, you got to love yourself. That's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible does not teach that we need to love ourselves. In fact, the Bible teaches us that we are to love God first. That's what it says here. One what the best great commandment is, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. In other words, your entire being should love God. Mentally, we should love God. In our hearts, from the inner man, we are to love God. And with our soul, the spirit man within us, so the entire being, we are to love God. That's first and foremost. In verse 39, he says, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18 tells us that. Then he says, on these two commandments hangs all the law and the prophet. It was like saying from Alpha to Omega, from the first to the last. You hang these two together and everything in the middle follows. So he says, first, you love God with all your heart and all your mind. Secondly, you love your neighbor as yourself. Do you see you in there somewhere? No, you're not in there. See, the world tells us you got to love yourself in order to forgive. You got to love you in order to do this and that. That's human psychology for ourselves. The Bible never says that. It says first love God, then love the other. There's an acronym, joy. You want joy? Jesus first, others second, yourself last. That's how you get joy. You put others ahead of yourself. Why do we get upset when things don't go our way? Because we're thinking of us first, right? If someone else gets a raise, we're ticked off because we didn't get it and then they got it, instead of saying, that's great for them. Having a positive attitude. No, because, see, we always want us first. I don't know how would you pronounce that? Yojo? Y-O-J? You others and then Jesus last? No, it's just Jesus first, others second, and then me last. That's how you have joy in this world. And so Jesus says, no, you love God, and the second is you love your neighbor as yourself. Well, who's your neighbor? Jesus covered that also in Scripture. Anyone around you is your neighbor. We're to care for neighbors and provide for neighbors and help neighbors. In Matthew 16:24, remember when Jesus said this? If anyone desires to come after me, he says, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. To let him means let him love himself first. No, that's not what he said. He said, you want to come after me? The first thing you have to do is deny yourself. That's the first thing you have to do. Deny yourself. As Christians, we have learned that we have no rights in the sense of ourselves. That was a very hard teaching for me to grasp as a young believer in the Lord. Because my whole life had been about me and myself and what I can do and what I can obtain and what abilities I had. And it was very hard to me to get to this place of denying myself because I want to take care of myself. I want to make sure I'm okay, I have everything that I need and not worry about other people until my needs are met. But Jesus said, listen, you want to follow me, you need to deny yourself. You need to love yourself less than you do God and then you do others. Very hard to do. And then he says, take up your cross and follow me. Now, taking up your cross is taking up death. It's dying to self. So, we are to put others above ourselves. Very tough thing to do. Many fathers understand this. They know that they must provide for their wives and their children to care for them. In the it's not a biblical truth, but in the Mary of the nativity scene of the nativity, the movie, the one that came out a few years ago, there's an interesting scene because Joseph and Mary are with the donkey and they're walking from Nazareth to Bethlehem, and they're by this water and they're hungry and they have no food, and he has it looked like a piece of tortilla. I don't know what they call it in Hebrew, but it looked like a piece of tortilla. And it was just a small piece, and he tears off half and gives it to Mary. And the second half is for him, and he takes a little crumb and he eats it and he gives it to the donkey. He cares for the donkey more than he cares for himself. And I always thought that's a great scene. It's a scene of a father who knows to provide for his wife and children first at the expense of himself. And when I see that, that's what makes me think of this. It just reminds me of what a father does. Or a mother, a single mother will always take care of her child ahead of herself. Make sure they have what they need. My mom was funny about shoes. We could have no food or anything, but we would always have a brand new pair of shoes, man. All of us kids always had a brand new pair of shoes. It was weird. She was weird that way. I think she grew up with no shoes. And so she made sure we always had a brand new pair of shoes. So we would eat beans and potatoes for weeks, but we'd have a great pair of shoes, because that's the way she was. She made sure we had what we needed. And so Jesus says, listen, you want to come after me? You need to learn to deny yourself. You love God first, you love others second, and then you're last. When we do that, things always seem to work out better for us when we put others ahead of ourselves. It makes no sense, right? But God, what did God say? Hey, listen, my ways aren't your ways, and my thoughts aren't your thoughts. I do things different than what you do. You think this way, I think another way. I've actually told myself many years ago, when I think my plan should go this way, I already know it's wrong because God's going to do another way. He always does another way. Because he doesn't think like me. He does things different, I don't know why he does it and how he does it. He just does it and he knows it. When I left my job to start ministry here full time, I had a plan to exit. It's going to go from full time to part time and then work my way out. And it took 2 years because the company sold twice and they didn't want me to leave. And so they asked me if I would please stay and help the merger and all this stuff. And I did. And then when it got to my turn to go to part-time, some stuff happened. Other employees didn't like it. Why? Because they put themselves first. They didn't care about others. And when I came to work one day, they called me in and said that I needed to go back to full-time. And I said, no, that's not the deal I made. My deal was I would go from full-time to part-time, and then I would ease my way out. And I was the personnel manager of this company and a salesman. And the manager at the time, whose job he got because of me, because they wanted me to be the manager, and I didn't take it because I was planning on doing the church. Now, I'm not bragging, I'm just sharing with you. Back then, this is 20 years ago or so, back then I was making $25 an hour. To become the manager, it would have been $52 an hour. I've never been into anything for money. I don't care about money that way. I care about it providing for my needs and paying my bills, but it doesn't dictate to me. It doesn't control me. I just won't let it do that. It used to when I was younger, but I won't let it do it no more. And I passed on that promotion. I said, no, I'm planning on going out, man. I'm not planning on staying here. You need to hire Jerry and let Jerry be the manager. Well, they did, and in hindsight, he was an okay manager, but he had no lead in his foot. He didn't know how to deal with people. He had no manager skills. Me, if I fire you, I'm going to fire you. It would bother me, but I got to do my job. I've always been able to do my job. So anyways, when that happened, I came in and they said, he told me you got to come back. I said, well, I'm not doing it. He goes, well, what do you mean you're not going to do it? I said, I'm not doing it. And he looked at me and says, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, you need to make a choice, dude. What are my choices? You either can fire me or you can lay me off. That's your two choices. Because I'm not coming back to work full time. I already made a deal with this company. I stayed 2 extra years to help them. And it's time for me for you guys to honor that deal with me. And he says, well, I can't fire him. I'm going to talk to Dave. Dave was the owner, previous owner who had still been working there in the other department, and they went and they came back. And anyways, he said, well, Dave said, we'll just lay you off. I'm going to give you 6 months severance pay. I go, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay. And it didn't go my way. My point is, it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. I was the only guy in that company to ever get severance pay. No one has ever gotten severance pay in that company. And they gave me my severance pay, and they sent me on my way. And I sat there in my office. I didn't know what to do. I was feeling just the weight of it all. I'm thinking, this is not the way I had planned to leave this job, And then I found out it's because some of the employees were complaining that I was working part-time, getting full-time benefits, and still making good money. That's the deal I made. You can't fault me for making a good deal. But as soon as I walked out, I called Linda and her husband Chad at the time and talked to them. They prayed for me, and I forget who it was. It might have been Chad. Just, keep your head up and just look them straight in the eye and say goodbye. That's good advice, I will. As soon as I walked out, I already knew who was complaining. They wouldn't look me in the eye. 2 people would not look me in the eye. The rest were, we're sorry to hear. And I knew it was them, and I just shook their hand, and I walked out of that place and came here and worked part-time and did what we did. But see, when you put God first and others, He'll take care of you. Now, in all the years that we have been here, do I look like I ever missed a meal? No. I've gone months with no pay. Things have happened to us. The Lord has always provided for my wife and I. He makes me cry a lot. I'll be honest with you, I cry a lot. Even Diane says, you know what, you're a crybaby. I said, I am a crybaby. When things go crazy, I just start crying to God. I don't know what else to do but cry to Him, because He's all I got. I have to cry to Him, but I've learned that. But I also learned, God has to be first in my life before anything, and then others. I do what I can for others, and then I do myself. And I don't mind taking care of myself, but not at the expense of God or other people. So Jesus says, listen, the best commandment, the greatest commandment, you love God. If you can't love God more than your husband, your spouse, and even your children, He's not first. He has to be first. Then He says you love others after that. And then yourself, you put yourself last. Hard thing to do, but it's something we must work on as we deny ourselves things that we know others should have. Maybe they're in need of something, and you were just about to buy a new TV, and you find out someone's car's broken, and you have the money, and your heart says, man, you ought to give them that money and get the car fixed. But man, I'm going to buy me a TV. And the Lord says, you should fix your car. And you're like, really? Really? It's a smart TV. I never had a smart TV. All mine have been dumb TVs. And then you do it, and then somehow God, He blesses you another way. Because He changes us. And that's what He tells these Sadducees. And then in verse 41, as we continue on, so remember, Jesus, others, and you, and that's all you'll have joy. In verse 41, He says, and while the Pharisees gathered together, Jesus asked them a question. Okay, so now Jesus flips it and He says to them, what do you think? So what's your thoughts about this? About the Christ, the Messiah? Whose son is He? From whose family does He come from? You guys know what the Bible teaches, or the Old Testament, or the Torah. What do you think? Whose son whose son is the Messiah? Whose son is he? And they said to him, well, he's the son of David. Of course, every Jew knew that the line would come from David. It was promised, it was prophesied that the Messiah would come from the line of David. So the answer is from the line of David. They believed that Christ would come from the line of David. They believed he was a descendant of David. They didn't want to believe that Jesus was that son. That was the problem they were having. I believe they knew who Mary was and who Joseph was. They were both considered from the line of David. Joseph didn't have intercourse with Mary to produce Jesus. Remember, she was conceived of the Holy Spirit. But as the adopted father, the line follows through. But Mary had the blood connection through the line of David, because she was also from the descendant of David. So Jesus comes as the descendant of David, and he comes as in the flesh from the line of David, making him a son of David. But he also comes from God, making him the Son of God. Now in Romans chapter 1, verse 3, we're told this. Concerning his son Jesus Christ, okay, the topic tells you right there. Concerning his son Jesus Christ, our Lord, who was born of the seed of David according to the flesh. How was that possible? I just told you. Who? Mary. Blood connection. And declared to be the Son of God with power according to the Spirit of holiness by the resurrection from the dead. So in the flesh, through Mary, he is the descendant of David. In the Spirit, he is the Son of God, because it was the Spirit who impregnated Mary, or made it possible for her to be pregnant and have power. Why? Because God is all powerful. Jesus said that earlier. You don't understand the scripture. You don't even know the power of God. Now, we know the power of God even through many Bible verses. One of them being, how did Mary get pregnant without a man? The power of God did it. It's nothing filthy, kinky, or anything. It's the power of God, the creator of God, who decided that Mary was the chosen one to bring forth God manifested in the flesh, as John chapter 1 tells us. So Romans tells us he was the Son of God, a son of descendant of David according to the seed, or according to the flesh, and he's also the Son of God with power according to the Spirit. Then he says in verse 43, he said to them, how then does David in the Spirit, you got to remember that. How then does David in the Spirit call him Lord? That's the word kurios, master in the Greek, kurios. Saying, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. What Jesus is doing here, he's quoting Psalms 110 right here. Because Psalms 110, this is what's written. In the Hebrew of Psalms 110, the first Lord is the word Jehovah. Jehovah. You guys know that name. That's the first Lord. First name of God. In the second Lord is the Lord, it's the word Adoni, or Adonai, you might have heard it, but it's Adoni. It means controller, or of human influence, as the Son. So he says to the Sadducees, or the Pharisees, how did the Lord say to my Lord? How did David call his son Lord, Master, Jehovah, God? Because see, in Jewish culture, a son is never called Lord by the Father. The Son calls the Father Lord, Master, Sir. The Son always goes back up, calls him Lord, calls him Master. The Father never calls the Son Lord. Never. It's never done. It's like a Jewish father never runs to his family. Never. They do not run. They walk. And Jesus tells them, if he is the Son of David, if the Messiah is the Son of David, and you've confessed that, then how did David call him, his own son, Lord? That's the question. That's what he says to him, right? If David then called him Lord, how is he his son? Because why? The Son never calls the Father, or the Father never calls the Son Lord. The Son always calls the Father. So Jesus tells him, if David called him Lord, his own son, how can he be his son? Because it's not possible. In Hebrew thinking, that's not possible. You just don't do that. You don't do that. He could, because David saw in the Spirit, his son is the Lord, the Messiah. That's all he could call him. In the Spirit, my Lord. Because see, spiritually, Jesus is King, Messiah of all who would receive him. And David was told, or David got a prophecy through the Spirit somehow to know that at some future date, his son, descendant, David, would be God manifested in the flesh. So he called him Lord. And Jesus is trying to get them to understand who he is. And they just can't connect the dots. Why? Because remember, he says, you don't know the scriptures. Your knowledge is minimal. You haven't really studied them like you should. And that's the problem with every believer today. The ignorance of Bible understanding comes from us not taking the time to what I think it was Timothy or Peter said, rightly dividing the truth. We have to investigate. We have to examine. We have to put the pieces together to form the truth. When we read and we connect, Romans with Corinthians or Genesis or whatever, all those pieces will always connect and bring us the truth every time. You can never have non-truth when it comes to the Word of God. They always fit. Always. If they don't fit, it's not because they don't fit. We're trying to put a piece somewhere where it don't belong. Like the Mormon Church trying to say that there is eternal marriage. Jesus already said there's not eternal marriage. See, they're trying to put a piece somewhere that it doesn't fit because the rest of Scripture don't confirm it. The rest of Scriptures don't fit right with it. Who did that? Man did that. God's pieces always fit. When you buy a puzzle and you get a 100-piece puzzle, can you put piece 63 where piece 22 goes? No, it has to go where it belongs. And that's the way the Bible is. It fits exactly where it's supposed to be. So Jesus said, listen, David called him Lord because he was his son. And David in the Spirit knew that was his son. But he's also his son in the flesh by descendant. In verse 46 it says, and no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day on did any dare question him anymore. This verse is like the lamb's been examined and we find no fault with him. He's perfect for the sacrifice that will be offered up in a few days from this teaching. See, they're trying to examine him. They're trying to find fault. They're trying to prove that he's not who he says he is. And he gives them the answers that confounds them in such a way here that they say, man, we can't even question this guy anymore. He just makes us look foolish every time he answers. When we think we have him, he says something brilliant. Well, of course, he's God. Amen. Manifested in the flesh. He's our Messiah. He was brought down here in order to change the world and bring man back to a relationship with God, because man had walked away from it, starting from all the way from Adam disobeying in the garden, all the way back. The fall of man has been carried through, and Jesus says God says we need to bring man back. We need to restore that relationship. So Jesus is sent for that very reason. Jesus wants them to understand, but they can't. They won't. Why? Because they got too much pride to bend and learn and come to understand. And let me tell you something. That is the fall of every Christian. If we cannot bend and learn from the Scriptures and acknowledge them for what they say, and we want to be stubborn and conform them to our view of things, you're trying to put the wrong piece of puzzle into the wrong slot, and you're going to always have problems with that. Always. The pieces have to go where God had created them to go. When you do that, it'll make sense. It'll make sense. And that's all Jesus was trying to get them to understand, who he was as the Son of David. So my last question, of course I know most of us here are believers. Who do you believe Jesus is? Is he the Messiah? Is he the one God chose to deliver you and I from our sins? To bring us back into that relationship with God? Do you believe Jesus is the Son of David in the flesh and also the Son of God by Spirit? The two, the Son, because John chapter 1 verse 14 says, and flesh became, and this, I lost it. And flesh dwelt among us. Speaking of Jesus coming in his birth, it says, and flesh became among us. In other words, Jesus came and became flesh for us, that he might deliver us, forgive us, and restore us back into that relationship with God. So, what do you believe? Now, I would say, trust me, to a degree that would be true. But greater, you get to the Bible and you believe it yourself and know why. So you can only trust me as far as what you know. But if you just trust me without knowing Bible, that's blind trust. That will get you in trouble at some point. You need to read, you need to confirm, and let the Holy Spirit show you, and let those puzzles fit for you. It's good in the beginning to believe people. I believe people all the time. But I believe God first and foremost. If he tells me that piece is in the wrong place, I got to find where it really belongs. And then it'll make sense. Amen? Amen. Father, we thank you that you have given us truth concerning marriage in heaven. There are none. We know there are angels, for Satan himself fell. And the Bible tells us 1/3 fell with them. Jesus said there is a resurrection, and God is the God of the living, not the dead. He tells us here that Jesus is the Messiah, the descendant of David in the flesh, but he's also the Son of God through the power of the Holy Spirit. Lord, these truths will be in our lives. They help us understand you and who you are and who Jesus is. And flesh dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Son. Father, we know who Jesus is. We know he's our Savior. We know he's our Messiah. He's our deliverer. We know because of his blood that will be shed, according to the verse that we're at here, in just a few days. And he will pay for the sins of the world. And we acknowledge that to you this morning, Lord. We're grateful for your sending Jesus to us. Lord, help us to love you first and foremost, to follow the great command, to love others secondly, and then put ourselves in that last position. Hard thing to do, Lord, but I know it's needed if we want true joy. So may you bless us, Father. May you continue to provide for us. May you continue to guide us. May you continue to reveal your truth to us through the Scriptures, because the Scripture always speaks the truth to us concerning our lives and what you would have for us. And Lord, the marriages that are here today, even those that are gone this weekend, gone somewhere, may you bless them. May you rekindle their love for each other. May you help them to enjoy what they have here now, because truly in heaven there is none. But we ask you to bless us now. We ask you to bless any upcoming marriages. We ask you to provide all that's needed in our lives, Lord. Whatever it is that we need today, we ask you to provide for us, Lord. Give us hope. Give us trust. Give us your word to guide us, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand.